Excellent. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you everyone for joining. This is our next installment of Lookup Answers, an ongoing series hosted by How to SFMC. We are featuring today Einstein features in marketing cloud engagement. With me, I have Jason Court and Karina Cohen. Will I advance the next slide, please, Karina? And it does look like you're speaking on mute.
There we go. Right. Sorry about that.
Excellent, no problem. Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So we do have a Q&A portion of the agenda today, but feel free at any time to pop your questions into the Q&A. I'll be monitoring as we go forward. If you're not on our Slack, feel free to join us. There's a sign up form on howtosfmc.com. Love to have you there. As far as our agenda today, we've got some intros. We'll be going through an overview of Einstein features within Marketing Cloud, the dashboards and recommendations, Journey Builder, and Content Builder. A little bit of a sidebar there on creative content, generative content. And then we'll be talking about web integration features as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into intros. I'm Amanda Turner. I'll be moderating our two panelists today. Take it away, Jason.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Jason Court. I'm a CRM technology lead. I work across essentially our entire marketing technology stack at the Comp Group over here in the UK. And I'm a marketing champion from the inaugural class way back when that first happened.
And I'm Karina. I am the CRM and automation manager for operations and technology at NBC Universal, overseeing groups such as NBC Sports, Fandango, if any of you use Sports Engine for your youth sports, a little thing called the Olympics. I've got on my Paris swag today to get everyone in the mood. And yeah, I was also a marketing champion, and fun fact, the very first technical intern at ExactTarget before it was Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So I've been doing this a long time.
Good to have you both with us. All right, as promised, we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of overview of what's available as far as Einstein features within Marketing Cloud engagement. As we all probably are aware on the call, there's Einstein features kind of sprinkled throughout the suite of Salesforce products, but we will be focusing on engagement as well as generally available features today, so nothing in beta or roadmap. Very good. All right, so the broad look at Einstein as far as the feature set available in Marketing Cloud, really the focus is on orchestration, segmentation, and content. So you can get some insights as well as further segment your audience, as well as serve up, customized content using everything powered by Einstein within Marketing Cloud.
I think one of the key things to call out about Einstein is it's quite a rapidly moving beast. It's been one of the most heavily sort of evolved parts of the platform in the sales marketing cloud engagement space over the last couple of years. It's had the most coverage in releases. It's had the most changes. It's had the most sort of rebadges of products and capabilities. So yeah, whilst we're going to go through the overview of what it is today, the standard Salesforce forward-looking statement may apply, and the things we're talking about now may not be the things that are still there when you come to use it, and the things that it's doing now may change or be renamed. So take whatever you see and whatever we go through today with a little bit of pinch of salt, because it is moving quite a lot. And items in, for example, the latest release, there have been products that are in Einstein that have been renamed. And that kind of thing may continue to happen as they really bed in Einstein across the sort of SFMC ecosystem.
And anything that you plan on using that does any type of picking for you, it needs 90 days to be trained properly before you'll get the ample results. So don't expect right out of the gate to get results, because most of them take training and putting some rules in place in order to get your exact uh, experience that you want to have. For example, back when I first launched the email recommendations for Famous Footwear, when we first turned it on, all we got were white socks because we went ahead and just picked everything that was our highest selling items. Little did we consider that everyone needs white socks to go with a pair of shoes, and sometimes they buy multiple pairs of white socks and only one shoe. So all we got was white socks. So it takes some time to actually get it trained up to what you want it to do. So keep that in mind, as well as there'll be some ramp up time if you haven't already turned on some of these pieces.
For sure. When I move on to the next slide, I think that kind of layers in so what each feature kind of that we'll go through, right? We're not going to go very quickly. We're not going to go into kind of grave detail on all these, right? We're not trying to sell you on these features, but here's kind of a nice slide on what's available and what it means in more layman's terms to you. But there's definitely some good capabilities in here. I think the panelists really want to focus on what they use day to day, right? Not everything is really applicable for everyone. Just because it's available doesn't necessarily mean you have a great use case for it, to be honest. Cool. So let's go ahead and get into our dashboards and recommendations. So this is where you can get kind of insights on how things are performing. There we go. Got a nice view on this one. Thanks for this capture here. I think it really paints a nice picture.
Yeah, this is one that I use quite often within NBC to kind of get a quick glance at how our journeys are working. And as you can see here, you can see delivered, click rates, but then it also gives you your change. And so I can take this back, and as you can see, we've had an uptick. Well, no, we actually haven't had an uptick. It's very common for your welcome email number one to be the one that they unsubscribe from, especially if they signed up via a giveaway or a promo. Because they didn't actually want to hear from you. They just wanted your free stuff. But this is one of the ways that I can help visualize that as well, because you can see once we get past the initial unsubscribes from people that didn't actually want to hear from us, then we start having a more common engagement across. You'll also see the part on the left is the same piece that is your little flag up on the right-hand side next to your name in Marketing Cloud, where with the Einstein guy, where it gives you the numbers. I just went over to the actual insights where it gives you a full list. So if you want to see more than just what's up at the little top drop down, then you go over to the actual Einstein messaging insights, and then you can look at all of your emails, and then you can actually go in and pick, like I did, which ones you want to look at together.
So when you kind of look at this graph, Karina, what's kind of like the first thing that you're looking for when you pull this up?
I'm definitely wanting to make sure that my click rate stays low. So as you can see, it's calling out that I have a really high unsubscribe rate on email one. And like I said, that one's common, but then email, actually that's our old email one. So we have two email ones in there. As you can tell, I was doing the screenshot quickly, but both of our email ones are definitely having higher unsubscribe rates than email 2 and 3. For some reason, we don't have anyone unsubscribing. We also have very few that have been delivered recently, which is quite common right now because we are switching over from sports to Olympics, because less than 2 weeks, April 17th, if you're here in the States, you will see NBC pivot from our normal sports to being Olympic skinned for everything. So right now is kind of that lull period. But this is just to make sure that I don't have a super high unsubscribe rate. Making sure that I have the normal number of people coming through. As you can see, I get an overall number at the top of how many have been delivered for that day. You can also open that up to be a wider period of time. But I typically go in and at least look at how many are coming through once a month, and then I deliver this and kind of compare it. We also use this to kind of gut check against our Datarama instance that we have.
Mm.
So
I saw you kind
I
of
don't have
nodding
to pull
along,
a bunch.
Jason.
Yeah, I use this quite a lot in our org, and a lot of it is to check, sort of monitor trends. And if you see anything that looks that looks a bit weird if you see a massive surge in send volume or a massive surge in open volume, or even a massive dip in open volumes and open rates. That can indicate that there's potentially some issues with your deliverability, some issues with your creative potentially, depending on how your open pixel is included in your email. If it's at the bottom and you've got a load of content and it doesn't fire, and someone just updated the creative, you might spot some of those things looking a bit strange that you may not see unless you're viewing this over an extended period. If you try and do it in isolation, it might look slightly odd, but you look at it over a longer period, you can see something really dramatic happening. It's really useful to get that at a glance. And it's the same with that little notification dude in the top right hand corner. That tells me immediately if I need to look at something or something that looks strange. Then we can really dig into the details with these messaging insights.
An anomaly isn't always bad either. It'll also tell you when there's an uptick anomalies. So that's the other thing to keep in mind, is sometimes it'll also call out moments where you can celebrate with your team because you've had an increase in engagement or sends or something.
Nice. Very nice view. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to Journey Builder and content. As you noticed on the previous slide, those insights come from using Journey Builder, right? So
sorry, there we go.
No, you're okay. You can go next one. There we go. So yeah, within Journey Builder, it's quite a few Einstein capabilities, almost exclusively. They've trickled a few out to Automation Studio, but as you can see on the screen, these are kind of the most frequent Einstein capabilities featured in Journey Builder. I'd say probably send time optimization is the one that I see absolutely the most. How do you guys use frequency or scoring split, if you use that at all?
We use frequency, especially during the Olympics when we go from sending once a month. So our cadence for Olympics as we get closer and closer goes from once a month to twice a week to weekly to twice a day for 2 weeks. So during the twice a day for 2 weeks, if we try and put in Journey Builder the newsletters, so that, and they're powered by RSS feeds, so that way we can then use this frequency split for people that have been messaged too much. And then we also tie that in with our opt-down page that we have for the Olympics as well. So that way we can kind of take into consideration both if they've opted down or if we feel that they're oversaturated and not engaging.
And yeah, from our side, it's fairly similar. We will take a look at the data that we get from the frequency split to assess whether our existing models for it are tallying up with what Einstein would say. We're typically fairly good on managing our volume and optimizing volume, but we have our own models, and in order to challenge our own bias and our own current views, the odd Einstein frequency split check is really useful to just validate some of the assumptions that you may be making outside of Salesforce Marketing Cloud.
So that's interesting. I think maybe not a lot of people are aware that these segments are available and surfaced within data extension. So are you saying that you actually export that data to compare it?
So it depends, because in some scenarios you may have more than one subscriber with the same email address. So the engagement of the subscriber may not be the same as the engagement of the email address. And these engagement splits and these engagement classifications are done at the email address level. So if, for example, me and my wife were both active subscribers, or I was an active subscriber with a brand and trading frequently but not opening emails, and my wife wasn't trading very frequently but was opening emails, you've got two very different personas there that are kind of in conflict. So my subscriber is actively engaging but with the brand or with the products, but not actively engaging with our messaging. But my wife may be actively engaging with our messaging but not with the brand. So sometimes it's useful to take a different cut of the data to see what the similarities and differences are when you look at it in different ways.
Another piece that I use heavily, especially when I was doing retail more so than media was the scoring split, where you were mentioning that they're available via data extension. So I would actually take my loyalist data extension and we would turn that into a UTM parameter that represented a high propensity to engage or purchase. And so then we could actually track on the website those people as our baseline versus everyone else. So it gave us an easy baseline that we could filter for in our Adobe Analytics suite to be able to see kind of what the baseline of the people that always engage and have a high propensity for engaging versus everyone else. And we could also take them out of the pool if we wanted to see a more realistic view. So we always kind of, or if we wanted to make executives really happy, we only used that view. But that's another way to use these besides just in like Journey Builder and whatnot, is you can also use it for your tracking pieces if you actually take it and match it back to your subscribers on your list.
I like that. That's nice. All right. So moving on to you're
Sorry,
okay
my
there.
keyboard is having issues.
That's all right. That's all right. We might have gone out of order with those two slides. We can kind of not stay on this one. Let's go to the next one.
Okay.
So kind of moving into Content Builder.
Oh, come on, keyboard. Oh,
Your keyboard is all over the place.
it is. I'm just going to turn that one off and use my laptop one.
There we go. Thanks for bearing with us, everyone. Yeah, so kind of moving into the Content Builder side of things, using AI within emails. As Jason said, it's kind of evolving very fast, right? That's a big area where Salesforce is kind of starting to hone in, as we'll go into more of the generative content later. But as far as Content Builder AI features, what exactly are you seeing kind of on the ground? What's being used here with what's available?
My team was really interested in those bubbles actually on the previous page.
Okay,
where
we can
kind
flip
of
back if you want.
Yeah. So
Quick
this
visual.
one, they love seeing the emotional tone insights because a lot of it comes from either our research team pre-creates subject lines, or we use like article headlines for certain big name athletes. So this kind of gives us, for all of those automated subject lines that we don't have a lot of control over, it gives us an idea of the tone that's still going out, because we're considered the voice of NBC. And we're the voice of the Olympics to everyone in America who wants to watch the Olympics. And so this helps us make sure that our tone is still on point. And then as well, it kind of gives them an idea of common subject line words and whatnot that they use as well. Up at the top, we don't use the subject line analytics so much because that's usually mostly our automated messages. But that is one of the big pieces that they like to use, is just to kind of see their tone of voice, which actually helps then with the personas or personalities that they have now coming out to go with the copy generation for subject lines and body copy.
Very nice.
And then back when we had the weather related widgets, we would use that along with we basically pick the weather and then use content selection to go with like sandals or boots back with shoes. So it made it actually easier to automate some of our pieces because we could go based off of the weather and then also pull in Einstein pieces based off of what they were most likely to buy and kind of work together with them to kind of optimize our content that now we have to go back to doing. Well, now they have to go back to doing manually because I'm at the Olympics.
Yeah, from our side, this isn't something that we use heavily. We have a lot of real brand-led type of messaging, and we don't do a lot of, like for example, the weather. You know, weather's not that huge a determining factor in some of the content that we would use. We do a lot of review and research into the content that we're using to make sure that we're hitting the people we need to hit in the right way. But it is something that is on our radar in terms of greater adoption of Einstein, because we do see opportunities with this kind of managing like the reuse of content, managing more automated activities, things that may be always on, that you want to be able to sort of set and not forget, but set and only think about once a month rather than set and think about all the time. type of campaigns, and this kind of copy insight and this kind of automating on the content testing side of things really helps optimize sort of passively rather than active optimization and prioritizing resource in different ways.
Got it.
Yeah, we tried to use a bit of the content selection pieces for sports, and our athletics just changes so fast and so much that we just, it was too far behind. It would have been nice to be able to self-select, but yeah, too many people are getting hurt and drafted and moved and traded. And
oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that data is constantly moving, right?
Yep.
I'd say that weather is probably the biggest use case I've seen come out of this feature set, essentially. Cool. Let's move on to our generative content. So you can move on. There we go. Next slide. So with this one, I think we've got a little bit of a copy paste error there. Apologies, y'all. So with this one,
my bad.
go ahead. You go ahead,
Sorry.
Jason. I was going to say you were going to talk to this a little bit more, so have at it.
Yeah, so my bad on the copy and paste. Yeah,
No
AI
problem.
would have done a better job of populating this slide than I did. So yeah, they've pushed a lot of the generative AI content or generative content through AI capabilities in the last couple of releases. It is really interesting to see what it can produce. You have to be cognizant of things like your own brand identity and making sure that you maintain your own tone of voice, because it can be very quickly potentially alter your tone of voice. It will learn from the content you're using, it'll learn from the prompts you give, and it'll learn from what's working elsewhere. Depends on whether you're investing and involved with the global data set or not. But it can really help if you've got, if you're looking for an opportunity to optimize subject lines, for example. It can actually take quite a while and a lot of effort to come up with the variants you want to use. Mm-hmm. But actually pushing a prompt into the Einstein subject line generator tool can give you 3 or 4 options at pace that you can pick a winner from and go, actually, that's the one I want to use as a challenger, for example, and really start taking some of the head space out of testing and let the creative kind of come from the generative AI. I think one of the key things to call out for me, just as I am in the UK and I use British English and I spell things differently, as you can tell with the localized with an S, not with a Z or a Z. Just be really aware that Einstein may not generate content in your local version of English, even though it only works in English. And be very aware of the fact that you have a certain amount of generative AI credits that you can use, and you have zero way of knowing how many you've used at this point until your account exec gives you a call and says, hey, you've used all your credits, give us some money. So it's one to be aware of when using the generative content capabilities. Is right now it's very much feature first and get it live so you can start playing with it, rather than full product with all of the bells and whistles and all of that governance and support infrastructure that you might have around a more established product in the Salesforce Marketing Cloud space. So one to be aware of, super useful, super interesting, super cool, but keep an eye on it and make sure it's not just putting exclamation marks on the end of subject lines you've already used.
That's a good call out. So how are you?
So yeah, this is kind of an example of the subject line generator where I was playing with it. And funny enough, after you and Jason and I logged off and I went back to this and changed it again, my subject line suddenly was flagged as offensive, or could be viewed as offensive. So it's definitely not perfect yet, because as you can see, I'm celebrating women for Women's History Month, but there's something in that phrase that will apparently offend someone. And it doesn't tell you what.
The nail polish.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. And then, yeah, as you can see, there's a couple down there where they kind of moved around the words and just put some exclamation marks and things. So,
Yeah,
um, but yeah, it will continue to learn as people continue to use it.
that's a good point. I don't know that everyone's necessarily aware that they're contributing to training the model, right? So as it matures, as it grows, things should, in theory, get better.
Yeah, absolutely. The more you use it, the more it learns, the better it will be able to support you in your initiatives. And if you are pushing into the global data set, you can pull from the global data set as well. So, you can learn from other brands who may be in similar verticals to you, and not have to do that kind of manual research. Because I think lots of brands will sign up to competitor mailing programs, see the content that's going out, see the subject lines that are being used, and use that as either inspiration or benchmarks or whatever it may be. If you're feeding into the global data and feeding from the global data, that can take some of that overhead off of you and make it a bit more straightforward.
And I did
So I
play a
think that
bit with brand identity pieces as well. And what they're asking you for when you're creating a custom identity are basically adjectives on how you would describe your company's like persona or identity, based off of like one main one. So I put in a couple where they were things like enthusiastic, and then put in a bunch of adjectives for joy, and then champion, because we have a lot of winners that do things. So why not have a champion mentality and identity? And just so you know, a lot of that as of now was just kind of injecting in those adjectives. So make sure whatever you put in as your adjectives for your identity, if you're going to make custom ones, that you're okay with them showing up in your subject lines.
Yeah, and I think that's where people come in, right? Again, this is
Mhm.
automation, sure, but you need to have someone reviewing afterwards to
Yep.
protect that brand identity.
Yep.
Yeah, and one thing that Salesforce does talk a lot about is the Einstein trust layer, where obviously you mentioned that the potentially offensive content of your subject line, and all that kind of governance that Salesforce puts in place. It's great that Salesforce puts that kind of layer in and that governance layer in to support you. But you are the people who know your brand best. You are the brand custodians when you're in that platform. So it's all good that Salesforce is saying this might be offensive, or it might not flag something that you may think is offensive. Always make sure that human aspect is included, and don't sidestep your responsibility when it comes to making sure that the messages that you are sending come out with the right tone of voice. It's great to generate content, en masse, but as we've seen with ChatGPT and other LLMs and any other sort of generative AI platforms, hallucinations do happen. You get weird content out of it, and whilst there is the governance layer in the Salesforce implementation with Einstein and Einstein GPT, it can still happen. And it's not going to be Salesforce that gets pulled up in the news because you've put something offensive in a subject line. It will be your brand that gets put in the news because you put something offensive in your subject line. So do make sure that you are keeping that sort of brand ambassador kind of hat on when you're using this kind of content generation.
Absolutely. So I think that that kind of brings us to the web integration, right? So we talked about what's inside Marketing Cloud, but how, if someone's visiting your website, how is that interacting with with Marketing Cloud, with what they're receiving on the other end, right? Whether it be SMS, email, or even feeding right back to the web, right? There's a loop there. So Einstein Web Recommendations, how are we seeing these features kind of play out on your day-to-day?
So on the retail side, we used this heavily. It was like our bread and butter in the bottom of emails whenever we did any type of messaging for transactional emails. This was our little bit of commercial email, would be your kind of recommended next best buys that went along with your whatever you had purchased. We are in the process now on the NBC side of using some of the email and web recommendations for some of our golf entities that we own, for identifying golf courses near people within the web and email, and then giving them those so that they don't have to do as much filtering for things such as our hot deals. So that way we can hopefully give even more targeted hot deals than we did before. The other nice thing is this is if you can't afford Interaction Studio. Wait, what is it called now? If you can't afford
Personalization.
interactions customization, this was the OG before there was that, and this just goes off of super messages and credits that you already have within your system, API usage, super messages, etc. Instead of having to do the full customization. No, what did you just call it? Oh man,
Personalization.
oh, it's
There we
personalization.
go.
Yeah, instead of doing the whole personalization studio. So this is kind of the way to tiptoe in before you have to go all in on that product.
That poor features had 4 names now.
I
I
keep
feel
trying to call it Evergage. There, I got it out.
At least you're
My
not
head the whole
locked
time was
into.
like, "Don't call it Evergage. Don't call it Evergage."
At least you're not locked into I Go Digital for the web pixel like I
Yep.
am. I can't shake that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, this can be, especially in your automated emails, a good way to kind of supplement content based off of what people are doing on your website. Although, keep in mind also you'll have to work with your web team to get the script up on there, and then there'll also be some limitations as cookies limitations continue to evolve over the years.
Mhm. Go,
Yeah, I
Jason.
think. Yeah, was it end of this year? We're expecting Chrome to have fully prevented third-party cookies on the web. At least over here, we're seeing that moving quite quickly.
Yep.
I have seen things like the iGo Digital cookie that was previously. I've used that previously, and you get an absolute shed load of data if you implement that in the right way. Because you don't have to just use the recommendations for the right here, right now, in the moment, and the next best or current best thing to do. Actually, you can pull some of the recommendations data to retain it for modeling and forecasting and planning. So if you're seeing, for example, a large number of subscribers whose next best action is to buy, like taking Karina's footwear example, is everyone needs to buy white socks, and you're seeing lots of recommendations to buy white socks. Actually, that's information that can be used for your buying team and your supply chain. So be aware of what opportunity that the data you can gain from these kinds of platforms can be used outside of your immediate marketing cloud use case. Because just because it's a marketing cloud data source doesn't mean it's the only data destination that could be valuable or could gain value from the data.
Very true.
Yeah. Because while that's a third-party cookie, right, you're collecting tons of first-party data based upon interactions on the internet. So it can be quite powerful. I actually cry when people use just kind of the default recommended pixel because there's so much more out there, even within the documentation. I would say the pixel itself has pretty good documentation. If you kind of drill down a layer, right, you can get those extras on there. But to that point, privacy, right? So moving on to the next slide, there's a lot of examples where some features of the pixel can't be used, others can, or there's simply a do not track involved. So as far as compliance, I know, Jason, you're dealing with probably the more strict of compliance than we have to deal with here in the States, right? We do have California acts that we're beholden to, right?
Yeah.
But can you speak to how this functions with what you're seeing in the EU?
Yeah. So even just with Google, for example, if you want to do advertising with first party data through Google, you have to provide evidence that you've collected the consent for the person you want to push into a Google ad space. And that's been in force since I think early March. And that kind of rollout is likely to continue. So you do need to be really robust with your compliance, have the right kind of processes in place. It can get real tricky when you get into the weeds, and people are seeing the opportunities they've once had kind of disappear if you're not implementing your own mechanisms to capture this data that would be compliant with kind of your advertising platforms as well. Because again, the data you're collecting using the Marketing Cloud platform can be used for your own existing channel activities, but also if you're looking at the wider opportunity with online advertising or lookalike audience type activities, that data has more value than just person went on page, person received email about product on page. It's person went on page, we know who this person is, we found 50,000 people who are like this person, who live in the same sort of location as this person, who we want to push that product to as well. So being really strict with the way that you're collecting and managing that data and being compliant with that data is going to be really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a good question came in through the Q&A, right? So if I do a server-side implementation, tracking code for Einstein, won't it count as a first-party cookie? Unfortunately, it's not the case, right? Because the tracking pixel you can see right in the URL is an IGO, which is amalgamous with Marketing Cloud at this point, right? It's their feature, so they are that third party, right? It doesn't matter where the cookie is, the JavaScript to generate the cookie is housed. Sure, if it's on your website, but unfortunately, Marketing Cloud is a third party when it comes to you and your customers.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say you have to build your own in-house pixel, and then you would have to then populate that over to your IGO digital to still be able to leverage that data within Einstein.
Yep. Yep. Very good. Well, we've got some Q&A if we want to move on to that section.
Okay. Oh, the other thing I wanted to call out real quick with privacy and compliance that we didn't put on here is you do have the option as well to opt out of the global Einstein analytics pieces. So you can still use Einstein and not have your company's data specifically used to train the global version of Einstein. We have that for certain parts of NBC, and it's not something that I even knew about until I was here. And they were like, "Oh no, we don't give any of our data back to Salesforce. We just use Einstein." And I was like, "Well, that's kind of cheating, guys." But you do have that option if your company is worried about competitors being able to use your data, not that they ever would be able to, because it's a global pool that none of us can actually access. But there is that opt-out version or option if your leadership is wary about sharing your data globally with Salesforce.
Yeah, that's an excellent call out. And not necessarily, that doesn't just apply to the web portion, right? So that's all of Einstein's features and
Yeah, that's
capabilities.
everything. So yeah, like our subject lines that we generate don't go back to the global information being used to train Einstein for everyone else. And yeah, all of our STO numbers don't go back. You have to do it via a contract, and you have to ask your account manager for it. They won't just openly ask you if you want to opt out. You have to sign a bunch of paperwork.
It's unfortunately important when you go through the MSA, right?
Yep.
You can, of course, not actually opt into Einstein, and therefore you won't be contributing, right? But in order to use it without contributing, that's where you got to get it in the master services agreement.
Yep.
Very good. All right, so first up, so how will these segmentation capabilities, I think we're going back to the personas, the Einstein personas, be affected when using Data Cloud? Do you view them as complementary functions? So I think that person's asking, basically, is Data Cloud something that you need for segmentation, right? Can you just use Einstein? If you have both, how would you see them kind of working together or against each other?
So you don't need Data Cloud to use the capabilities that are native in Marketing Cloud. That off the bat, you don't need Data Cloud. I think the push for Data Cloud is really interesting. I think whether the segmentation capabilities will be affected, it may be that you decide that actually there is something in Data Cloud that you prefer, and you could build something that you prefer that's more tailored to your requirements using some of the capabilities within the Data Cloud platform instead, and you can feed that into Marketing Cloud. Likewise, you can take the data from Marketing Cloud, and you should be able to feed that back into Data Cloud for Data Cloud to gain value from as well. But again, it depends on which attributes you're looking at and matching in between all the data sets. If you're matching in email address to your Data Cloud, or matching in your contact key to Data Cloud, and Data Cloud's doing it at an email address or contact key level, it can get a bit ambiguous and kind of get a bit confusing. So they're probably complementary rather than, contradictory. But I think you don't need Data Cloud to make the most of what you've got, but you can use Data Cloud as well to decide if what you've got is the thing that you need, or if there is another thing that you need on top or instead.
Yeah, I +1 that.
Yeah.
Right. It depends on your Data Cloud. Depends on your Data Cloud implementation, right? Because like you said earlier in the call, Jason, all the Einstein kind of personas that it's building are based upon email address, right? So that's a fact and consideration when analyzing those data sets, right? Because you're not looking at necessarily just email address. You could have some match rules that kind of make that a little bit weird within Data Cloud. But yeah, you can kind of use them in conjunction. I certainly don't see Einstein as a replacement if you're looking at Data Cloud segmentation features, though. All right. So next one, going back to copy insights. So we know we work very well in English. What other languages produce good results? Do we have any insights there?
They only do English for now.
Okay, that's an excellent call out.
They do some predictive insights for some other languages. So you can get predictive insights for like Spanish, Portuguese, German. I think there's a couple of other languages that you get that predictive insight for with the copy insights. I don't know whether you can't get anything generated in other languages, but you can do predictive in some other languages.
Yeah, the screen that I showed with all the bubbles for the emotions and whatnot, you can have that, but that's as far as you can take it, is just viewing the information. Everything else, taking action-wise, you have to do manually still.
Got it. All right, so next one. So do any of the Einstein features support an A/B testing strategy, either explicitly or implicitly?
Well, there's always Path Optimizer and Journey Builder, where basically you make your paths and then it will choose your winner after whatever established time that you have. That would be the one that I guess would be or explicitly. I'm being backwards today. There are also ways that you can use, like the subject line builder has a way to test beforehand, but you could also take those subject lines and even do your own A/B testing as well, though, with those subject lines, and then report back on how they performed as well.
Yeah, I think there's value in doing it both ways, because I think you run the risk of, if you're using just email engagement as your definition of optimizing, and your A/B testing is limited to your email activity, it's all well and good to see a high open rate, but if no one clicks your email and no one buys anything, is that really your winner? So I'd be hesitant to just use Einstein as part of, or as a key determining factor in the success of a test. I think I'd want to look more holistically, because it's all well and good getting those people to open an email, but if no one clicks it, or getting those people to click an email, but if no one buys because you've gone to the wrong landing page, you end up in a position where you're optimizing.
And that's where those UTM strategies I spoke of earlier make it easier to do that reporting on efficacy, instead of having to go in and manually do it. So anytime that you can use any type of extra information that you can pass along that is still considered first party and isn't PII. So like I said, it's our high propensity to buy was just like a HPC is what it said in our web string. So no one knew what that meant except for the people that were looking for it in our Adobe Analytics. It didn't tell you anything about the person. You can come up with whatever you thought HPC meant.
All right.
Absolutely. It's it depends on what your A/B testing strategy is. If you are just trying to optimize for opens and don't care about everything else, then you probably could do a lot of it with Einstein. If you're looking at something more holistic and more funnel start to finish, then it can be a contributing part, but it would never be the sole provider.
Yeah, I found a lot more success when I bring in my analytics team and do a more holistic approach than just throwing in like send time optimization and then hoping it improves open and click rates.
Yeah. These are fallible tools. So I didn't quite catch where we were in the conversation. Apologies when this question came in, Camilla. So feel free to come into the chat to ask more. Are there the recommendations cached? When are they composed, at send time or after? So I'm thinking those are the email recommendations, perhaps.
So email recommendations are cached. It's either 60 or 90 days. I apologize. I'm pretty sure it's 90. But then, oh, what was the second part? Send time optimization, that is just taking a look over at your overall send times for that person and also an aggregate of your whole account. So that one stays a lot longer because it's used kind of as an overall holistic view of what's the best send times as kind of your fallback. So you'll have your person specifically that has their best send time, but then they also use everyone's send times as your fallback if you select that checkbox.
Yes, STO is a rolling 90 days, isn't it? And I think it they call out something like 20 odd different factors they use, and it gets refreshed once a week.
Mm-hmm.
So your best send time will be that send time for that week. And the way it picks, if I remember rightly, is you can go in with more than one potential best time over the period you elect. And then Einstein will do a little bit of randomization in terms of which of those best times you will get. Because you run the risk of, if you have a best time and you only ever send out that exact best time, you start instilling bias into the model, and unpicking that bias over an extended period can be quite tricky. So especially with something like STO, if you always send emails at 2:00 on a Tuesday, you know what? Everyone's best time to get sent an email is going to be 2:00 on a Tuesday, because that's all Einstein knows. So you have to be quite careful about the bias that you put into the data of the Einstein models, as well as what you want to get out of them.
Yeah, it's very true. And I feel like it was roadmapped at one point, but I can't remember if it's live or not, whether triggered sends count towards that STO analysis. Do you
Last time I had looked, it did not count.
Okay.
Triggered sends should, transactional sends shouldn't, because under the hood, Journey Builder is all triggered.
That's what it is. Thank you. Transactional
That's a
sends
good
don't.
differentiator.
Thank you.
Okay.
We only use old-fashioned triggers. I forgot about Journey Builder. Yeah. Old-fashioned triggers, if you do those as transactional sends, then those do not count. So yeah, if you were hoping that all of your like shipping notifications and purchase confirmations are counting towards it, if they're a transactional send, they do not count.
Yeah, which is honestly probably a good thing, right? I'm sitting there waiting for that order confirmation the second it comes in, and not necessarily checking my email at that time. All right, very good. That is the end of our Q&A. Let me just double check the chat. Oh, one more question. So is Spanish on the roadmap at all? So that's going back to the question about the subject line generation.
So I think part of the problem is that any of those where they have to generate any type of code that's not US English, they're going to have to base it off of some type of like language conversion. And people are very quick to tell you when you've used Google Translate for your email copy instead of an actual translator.
This is very true.
So that is kind of the problem that they have with using or with generating copy for other languages, is that it may not be true. They can't cover every dialect, because even over in the UK, like, how many dialects do you have?
Too many.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's kind of the problem there, where I mean, even some of the standard English ones come out, and I'm like, whoa, are you sure that's a sentence?
Yeah.
And also, I mean, we don't have visibility of the roadmap either. So even if, despite us saying there's definitely challenges, we can't say that it's not on the roadmap, because we don't have any visibility of that. So it may be on the roadmap, and it may have ways to solve those problems, but there are definitely challenges. Even with,
well, the account manager was the one that told me about the translation pieces, because they don't know how they would be able to translate properly.
Where's our forward-looking statement?
Yeah, that one, like, no, I mean, like, that one we literally asked. I mean, it was a while back, so because we have, I mean, NBC's all over the world,
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Any parting thoughts before we wrap this up, you two?
Have a go. Try it. Like,
Yeah,
if
same.
you're not using it, try it. The amount of effort to turn it on is minimal. You go into setup, you turn it on, you wait for a couple of days for it to process the data, and then you can have a go. Yeah,
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
know
when I
what you're
joined
missing out
NBC Sports, they weren't using any Einstein features, and they actually had opted out completely. And so I went through the whole buy-in process, got us to where we had our special opt-in just to be able to use it, but not to pass off our data. I mean, and now it's part of our Olympics strategy to make sure that we're not over messaging people.
Love it. All
And
right.
that was a 2-year period. That wasn't just a couple months. Like, that has been since Tokyo Olympics to now.
So your timeline's by Olympics at this point in your life, Karina?
Well, when there were 2 within 6 months and now there's another one, like, once I go back to being every 2 or 4 years, then it won't be so much. But yeah, right now it's basically my life has been like, when is the next one? There was Tokyo, and then there was Beijing, and then what, we had a year and a half, not even a year and a half, and now there's Paris. So I'll finally get to breathe after this Olympics because there won't be like 3 in a 2-year period.
Oh, we had another question sneak in. Einstein recommendations, are those rendered at send or open time?
Send. Those basically take a snapshot of the email recommendation at the time of send and then push it out the same as the rest.
Versus your interactive email to throw in another capability within Marketing Cloud. That one's at open time.
Yep.
So don't get those too confused.
Yes.
All right. Very good, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. As I mentioned earlier, we will go ahead and put the recording up on our YouTube, and it will also be available in the Trailblazer UI there. Thanks again for joining us. Thank you for Jason and Karina giving their time. Have a good one.
Don't forget to watch the Olympics in July.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.